over the years, there have been hundreds upon thousands of wrestling characters and gimmicks and, things introduced. Well, today, we've got 7 tasteless wrestling characters that'll make you cringe. I like cringe. Do you like cringe? We're here. I'm hanging out with the flock today live on Twitch. And if you want to hang out with us, you can click the bottom link in the description. Otherwise, you can catch all the videos here on YouTube. If you want to support the original upload of the content, who happens to be a very dope creator, click the top link in the description. I love 7 Wrestling. Without further ado, the crows are cawing. That means it's time to go.
Professional wrestling has always been part athletic showcase, part fever dream, and nowhere is that more obvious than in the long history of weird, wild, and downright insane gimmicks. We've had wrestling garbage men, evil tax collectors, an undead mortician, wrestling turkey, one guy pretended to be a plumber, wrestling magician, and yes, there was even a wrestling zombie on ECW on Sci-Fi for some reason. Clowns, mummies, monks, voodoo priests, leprechauns, wrestling has never met a weird gimmick it didn't at least try once. And yeah, sometimes this creativity can go a bit too far. I'm Senior Siete for 7 Wrestling. Let's take a look at 7 more tasteless wrestling gimmicks. Now, before we get into this, we appreciate your support, so if you enjoyed this video, please hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and hammerlock that notification bell. Also, we've got merch. Show the world you're a part of the brotherhood, even if you're a sister, with some of our snazzy apparel, stickers, and other business. Number 1, World Atlas. Tony Atlas was one of the most physically dominant and charismatic stars of the early 1980s. At a time when Vince McMahon was still building the WWE into a national juggernaut, Atlas stood out as one of the first black wrestlers to be regularly featured in a prominent spot, often showcased as a fan favorite with freakish strength and an impressive agility for a guy his size. One of the most overlooked facts about Atlas's early career is that he actually defeated Hulk Hogan in a singles match in Madison Square Garden back in 1981. Yes, this was pre-Hulkamania Hulk Hogan, but hey, it still was Hulk Hogan. That win was a big deal at the time and helped cement Atlas's place as a legitimate threat at the top of the card. Atlas also made history in 1983 when he teamed up with Rocky Johnson to become one half of the first black tag team champions, defeating the Wild Samoans. Wait just a minute there. You're telling me there's Samoans in wrestling? Now, while the WWE didn't always give black wrestlers the same platform as the white counterparts, Atlas broke through with raw power, undeniable charisma, and a crowd connection that could not be ignored. Unfortunately, backstage issues and substance problems would eventually derail his main event momentum, and his career trajectory changed drastically by the mid-80s. But at his peak, Tony Atlas was an absolute force. When Tony Atlas returned to the WWE in 1990, fans were expecting a triumphant homecoming for Mr. USA. Instead, they got Saba Simba, a mashup of cultural stereotypes and Vince McMahon's worst creative instincts. Gone was the proud, flag-waving Atlas. In his place stood a character dressed in faux African regalia, complete with a spear, tribal music, and a name that literally translates to 7 lions in Swahili. Sounded exotic enough for Vince to find it marketable, but came off as shallow window dressing to everything else. The whole thing reeked of 1990s style tone deafness, the kind that tried to pass off racial caricatures as colorful characters. It was a gimmick completely disconnected from Atlas's real heritage, real accomplishments, and very real charisma. Worse yet, it reduced a pioneering athlete into a punchline. Roddy Piper never wanted to hold back, couldn't resist mocking the gimmick on commentary, highlighting how ridiculous and out of touch it was, even by WWE standards. In hindsight, Atlas has spoken out about the Saba Simba run as a low point professionally, but one that personally saved his life, pulled him out of homelessness, and gave him a second chance. That's the tragic paradox of the whole thing. Behind the absurdity and embarrassment was a man who genuinely needed the opportunity. Shame wasn't on Atlas, it was on the system that thought that this was the best way to reintroduce him to a new generation. Fortunately, this was
That's rough, man. We did check out the Dark Side of the Ring episode. If you guys haven't seen that one with Tony Atlas, I would definitely recommend watching it. It's really touching ending to that one. But dude, that Saba Simba shit is yikes, man. That's a rough one. Yeah, he was definitely shaking the wagon back there. He was dragging the trailer along, bugging out. Yeah, that's one on the cringe counter for me. I'll give him that one. I definitely cringed at that. That's a oof.
Would be the last time Vince McMahon would ever use an African stereotype as a number 2 African nightmare. The one-man gang was a walking, growling embodiment of 1980s wrestling excess, a massive, mohawked brute in a denim vest who looked like he got lost on the way to central casting for a biker movie. Billed as a 450-pound street brawler from Chicago, Gang was pure intimidation in size 22 boots. He wasn't pretty, he wasn't technical, and he definitely was not subtle. In fact, when non-wrestling fans think of wrestling, they probably think of guys like the one-man gang. However, in his infinite wisdom, Vince McMahon decided to repackage the towering wrestler as a jive-talking, dashiki-wearing caricature of an African male. The transition was introduced via a vignette set in a dark alley where Mean Gene Okerlund was meeting up with the gang's manager, the Doctor Style Slick. In short order, they were surrounded by faux witch doctors and tribal chanting because subtlety was not in the WWE's playbook. There, a spiritual awakening took place, and one-man gang was reborn as Akeem, the African Dream. This new character came complete with exaggerated accent and dance moves, which was clearly modeled after stereotypes rather than any authentic African or African-American culture. Why? Well, the popular story has always been that Vince was punishing Gang for missing a couple of shows, but in recent years, Slick has claimed that Akeem was actually his idea. Now, many fans and critics at the time, and especially in retrospect, found the gimmick offensive for obvious reasons. It wasn't cultural appropriation, it was straight up mockery. And while Vince probably thought he was being edgy or funny, the end result was a gimmick so drenched in stereotype that even WWE fans, a group historically tolerant of absurdity, have looked back at it with a collective cringe. Number 3, Gallows humor. Luke Gallows has carved out a niche in the wrestling world as a tough brawler, particularly known for his time with the Bullet Club in New Japan Pro Wrestling and later as part of the club in WWE. As a member of the Bullet Club, Gallows paired with Carl Anderson to form quite a formidable tag team. Blending his imposing size and brawling style with Anderson's technical prowess, the duo became 3-time IWGP Tag Team Champions, embodying the rebellious outlaw spirit of the faction. When Gallows and Anderson made the jump to WWE, they were rebranded as The Club, aligning with AJ Styles to create some of that Bullet Club magic. While WWE initially presented them as a dominant force, their portrayal gradually shifted into a more comedic role, often undercutting their legitimacy. One instance had them dressing up like doctors and describing the damage they had done to Big E's business. They'd say, "We recently completed emergency surgery on Big E, the results of which were nuts. Kind of makes you want to bawl your eyes out, doesn't it, doctor?" It does make me a little bit testy. Okay, I can't throw any stones at that. I've made way worse jokes. Now, before Gallows was cracking skulls in the Bullet Club or grunting through backstage comedy skits with Carl Anderson, he was Festus. This guy who stared blankly into space until a bell rang, then suddenly he would transform into a raging maniac with the coordination of a caffeinated rhino. WWE Creative, in all their mid-2000s glory, decided that Gallows' best path to superstardom was to play a possibly lobotomized farmhand with violent triggers, and honestly, it kind of got over for a bit. Paired with Jesse, played by Terry Gordy Jr., the son of legendary Freebird Terry Gordy, because wrestling is less of a family tree and more of a wreath, Festus was the silent half of a duo that WWE couldn't quite figure out if they wanted to push, mock, or, quietly forget. Gimmick suggested some sort of unspecified mental issue, and, they played it for laughs, which is not a great look. But it actually gets weirder. In 2009, Festus would join CM Punk's Straight Edge Society, with the storyline being that the reason he behaved the way he did was because he was addicted to pills, and Punk helped him kick the habit. Oh, so
That's kind of a crazy way to flip that into something while keeping the continuity, though. To be fair to them, as absurd as that is, that's kind of a crazy way to canonize that. Like it's the same character for real, for real. Ah, hey, that's praising me. Okay. Please highlight some way. Shame, my man just says he's out there he's off his rocker. He's a couple of years early though. The kids ain't start getting like this till, all that new music, huh? Yeah. Yeah, old bird lady talking to you. Yay. Yay.
When he looked like this, he was really just messed up on drugs. Okay, that's much better. Number 4, Boogie Fever. Professional wrestling has long loved its spooky, ooky characters, the undead, the demonic, the cursed, the mysterious, whether it's The Undertaker rising from a coffin, Papa Shango casting voodoo curses, or Bray Wyatt cult preaching in a smoky room. The supernatural stuff always makes for a killer video package. These characters thrive in the world of pre-tape promos, flickering lights, creepy music. Problem is, eventually, the bell rings and you gotta wrestle. No matter how scary someone looks when they're walking through fog in a haunted boiler room, they still have to put on spandex and trade hip tosses under arena lights in front of a crowd. That's the great paradox of spooky gimmicks. You can be built up as an immortal demon or a vengeful spirit, but the moment you start bumping around for a dropkick, that mystique is going to take a plunge. Even The Undertaker, the gold standard of supernatural gimmicks, had to walk the tightrope between chilling death figure and regular old wrestler who can still lose to a roll-up. And for every Undertaker, there's a Mordecai, Kevin Thorne, gimmicks that looked good in promos but immediately fell off the moment they actually had to wrestle, had to perform Irish whips and headlocks. It is hard to maintain an aura of cosmic terror when you're visibly calling spots during a tag match or selling a punch from, I don't know, Mike friggin' Knox. That's why spooky gimmicks are a tough act to sustain. They demand a careful balance between theater and athleticism. Too much wrestling, the illusion fades. Too little, comes off as super fake. Still, wrestling keeps trying, because when the lights go out and the eerie music hits, there's always a pop. In real horror, figuring out how to make a family of creepy creepies lose a multi-person tag match. Which brings us to the Boogeyman. Debuting in 2005, the Boogeyman wasn't exactly known for his in-ring technical.
This man used to scare the shit out of the Rocco. Used to scare the absolute shit out of Little Crate. Man.
Prowess, he had the build, the charisma, and a fantastic commitment to the gimmick. But when it came time for actual wrestling, things got ugly. Matches were short, sloppy, and usually carried by his opponents, so rather than risk exposing the weakness in his work rate, WWE smartly leaned into the other side of his gimmick, that being the disgusting nightmare fuel side. Boogeyman didn't win matches with wrestling holds, he won them by being so repulsive and unhinged that opponents were too distracted by him chowing down on handfuls of live worms. If you couldn't wrestle like Shawn Michaels, the next best thing was apparently to traumatize your opponents and the audience through sheer gross-out spectacle. He'd even cram the worms into the mouths of his opponent. Ugh, every match turned into an endurance test for anyone with a weak stomach. You know, like me. All right, let's move on. Moving on. Number 5, Claw and Order. The WWE's long tradition of evil foreigner gimmicks is basically wrestling's version of a xenophobic greatest hits album. For decades, if you weren't born in the good old US of A, Vince McMahon's first instinct was to slap a flag on you, give you a manager who shouted fake accents, and declare you a threat to democracy, or at least Hulk Hogan's title reign. Whether it was the Iron Sheik, Nikolai Volkov, then Yokozuna, Muhammad Hassan, or even Rusev, WWE never met a non-American it couldn't cartoonishly vilify. Even Canadians, our friends to the north, like the Fabulous Rougeau brothers and Dino Bravo, were met with anger and USA chants. And as much as we love to vilify Vince, because, you know, it's easy,
is a difference between
this
the
trope
two?
has been a part of pro wrestling for a long time. Take, for instance, Fritz von Erich, real name Jack Atkinson, was one of the earliest examples of wrestling's love affair with this method of getting heat, and his character was unapologetically built around being a Nazi-esque villain, a gimmick that today would get someone canceled before they finished lacing their boots, unless they were a musician. In the 1950s and 60s, Fritz portrayed a cold, sadistic German heel who goose-stepped his way to the ring. His finisher was even called the Iron Claw, and it was delivered with all the subtlety of a propaganda cartoon.
Man.
He would cut promos in broken English, bark orders like a drill sergeant, and lead hard into the post-World War II paranoia and anti-German sentiment. ID was simple: make Americans hate him so much, they'd throw money at whoever was brave enough to take him down. Now, context matters. This was the era when wrestling was pure kayfabe and audiences believed. In that environment, a German sympathizing heel was like printing money. Was it offensive? Absolutely. Fritz played a caricature of a genocidal regime less than a decade after the Holocaust ended. It wasn't subtle, it was not respectful, but it worked.
That's
In the most
crazy,
cynical way,
man.
he got heat, buckets of it, from crowds who wanted nothing more than to see this German menace get his comeuppance. Ironically, Fritz would go on to become the patriarch of the all-American Von Erich family, eventually rebranding himself as a Texas wrestling icon. But his early run as a German heel is a sobering reminder of just how far wrestling was willing to go for a reaction, even if it meant weaponizing real-world atrocities. Number 6, worth the wait. Vince McMahon's fascination with mocking overweight people has been a recurring theme throughout the WWE's history, often presented under the guise of entertainment. Throughout the decades, McMahon has consistently used body shaming as a comedic device to establish villains and underdogs. In the rock and wrestling era, we had Ravishing Rick Rude
That's
telling all
crazy,
the overweight,
man.
out-of-shape inner-city sweat hogs to keep the noise down while he took his robe off. Buddy Rose would sell his fictional blow-away diet. I always wondered what would happen if you sent something to that address. Also, voiceover said you could call 1-800-LARDASS. I'm not going to do that. There was also the Rosati sisters, who were a fixture on primetime wrestling. Bobby Heenan consistently referred to them as the Oinkettes. New Generation featured Tammy Sidge and Chris Candido
The
as Skip and Sunny
Oinkettes?
Body Donna, a pair of aerobics enthusiasts. Ruthless Aggression era saw the former ECW Nova as the fitness infomercial guy Simon Dean. Here he is pitching his wares to an unappreciative audience. This woman was asked if she was able to shave under her arms because they were so flabby, and this was her understandable response. Piggy James, Bastion Booger, Bertha Faye, and one very weird one that I'm betting a lot of people don't remember, Muffy. Muffy was a short-lived and largely forgotten WWE character introduced in 2000 as the personal trainer and best friend of Stephanie McMahon. Portrayed by Karen Mower, Muffy's gimmick was that of an obnoxiously fit, hypercritical trainer who constantly berated the audience and other wrestlers for not being in peak physical condition. Her entire character revolved around shaming people for their weight, mocking those who didn't meet her unrealistic fitness standards. Now, despite being positioned as a heel, meant to amplify Stephanie's growing arrogance, the gimmick was so poorly received that it was quickly scrapped after just a few segments. Number 7, Kung Fu. Picture it. It's a WCW creative team meeting in the early 90s. Light bulb goes off in someone's head and he says,
Uh-oh.
what if we took
What
every
about-
Asian stereotype, ran it through a blender, and then dumped it all into one character? Not bad, says one of the bookers, but what if we had that character played by a white dude? High fives and hugs all around, and Yoshi Kwan was born. Introduced to WCW.
Yeah. Yeah, that's crazy. Yeah. Ooh, yeah. I think we saw this in that 100 worst gimmicks video. That's wild. Ah, yeah, what the hell is Yeah, that's crazy. They wild for all this. They bucket with this.
WCW in 1993, Yoshi Kwan briefly feuded with Cactus Jack over a bag of mystery stuff.
The
man
hell
behind
y'all
the
say?
meticulously sculpted facial hair was Chris Champion, a white American wrestler from Florida. He'd had a run with some pretty bad gimmicks. He was part of the time-traveling tag team, The New Breed, that being a feature from the year 2002, where apparently Dusty Rhodes was the president. Oh, baby, I'm gonna give the Middle East a clubbering. From there, he was a wrestling ninja turtle named Cowabunga.
Nah, my boy had no luck. I I thought Glenn Jacobs had some shitty gimmicks. Damn. To go out there as Cowabunga? That's absurd. Like that's wild to me. Not the Black Ninja Turtle though. I've never seen that one. Yeah, that's absurd, man. They can't even try.
All bad gimmicks, but with Yoshi Kwan, he finally had another terrible gimmick. Slap on some martial arts gear, squint a little, and suddenly we've got ourselves an Asian assassin. What could possibly go wrong? Kwan was portrayed as a mysterious martial artist with deadly kicks, who's managed by Harley Race and quickly thrown into a feud with Cactus Jack, where his main job was to act like a silent ninja and get beat up. But even in the 90s, this gimmick raised concern. The exaggerated mannerism, the faux Asian name, and the fact that Kwan never spoke because the accent would have been too ridiculous even by WCW standards. Controversy isn't just someone was pretending to be a nationality that they weren't. You know, wrestling has sadly done that plenty, but there was zero effort to make it respectful or even slightly believable. Unsurprisingly, this gimmick did not last long. Kwan was gone almost as quickly as he appeared, buried under the weight of his own absurdity, and the fact that even WCW realized, hey, maybe this is a little much, you know, even for us. Although it's entirely possible they were thinking, well, you know, it worked for breakfast at Tiffany's. Well, there's our list. Did I leave out any other tasteless wrestling gimmicks or so? Please leave them in the comments section below. Also, if you enjoyed this video, please hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and rock bottom that notification bell. Until next time, I'm Senior Siete for 7 Wrestling saying bye-bye.
Yeah, I'm not gonna lie. That Yoshi one. That is oof. You know what? I think this video was like a continuation though. I think you've got Stardust. Where is Stardust? Nah, I think this was like a continuation. I think you have another part to this video. That's a yike. Yeah, I definitely cringed at a couple of those. Oof. As always, it's always a pleasure reacting to 7 Wrestling's videos. Check out the top link in the description. Show them some love if you haven't yet. Why haven't you clicked that link yet? I'm gonna beat your ass. With the bottom link in the description, hang out with me and the flock and react a lot. There's also bonus content on a free Patreon that is free. Yup, free content. I'm not lying. It is literally free. Uploads every day. Literally every day. I'll see you in the next video. Am I sure weird? Don't be weird. Thank you so much to those of you that have made it over to the Patreon. I appreciate you.
I'm still hungry.